During the Middle Ages, an unspeakable act of barbarism was taking place throughout Central and Western Europe. Thousands of cats were being burned alive as a form of entertainment for the public. During these dark ages, cat burning was thought to bring good luck and fortune. They would put dozens of cats in nets, cages, and barrels over a large bonfire and watch them as they burned to death. According to Welsh historian Norman Davies, people shrieked with laughter as the animals, howling with pain, were singed, roasted, and finally carbonized. And according to American historian Robert Darnton, crowds made bonfires, jumped over them, danced around them, and threw into them objects with magical power, hoping to avoid disaster and obtain good fortune during the rest of the year. A favorite object was cats. Cats tied up in bags, cats suspended from ropes, or cats burned at stake. Parisians liked to incinerate cats by the sackful, while the Couramos of Saint-Chamond preferred to chase a flaming cat through the streets. In parts of Burgundy and Lorraine, they danced around a kind of burning maypole with a cat tied to it. In the Metz region, they burned a dozen cats at a time in a basket, on top of a bonfire. While this barbaric act occurred in many places throughout Central and Western Europe, like Britain for example, it was particularly common in France. French kings often witnessed it and even ceremoniously started the bonfires themselves. Cat burning was considered a midsummer routine in France. It is believed that King Charles IX once threw a live fox into one of the bonfires for extra amusement. Born in 1875, Samuel Hose was a young African-American man who grew up on a farm in Macon County, owned by the Jones family, where his mother had been working as a servant. Sam learned how to read and write, and most of the people who knew him described him as intelligent and friendly. Sam had plans to pursue higher education, but due to some circumstances, he had no choice but to work as a manual laborer instead. In 1899, Sam left Macon County and went to Coweta County, where he got employed by the Cranford family. Sometime during that same year, Sam Hose's employer, Alfred Cranford, was found dead in his home. His head appeared to be split by an axe, and his wife, Mattie, was raped. Sam was accused of committing the heinous crime, and he was apprehended on April 23, 1899 in Marshallville. Sam told the authorities that he had requested time off to visit his mother, because she was ill. According to Hose, Alfred Cranford refused, and threatened to kill him and pointed a revolver at him. Hose claimed that, due to the threat, he acted in self-defense by throwing an axe to Cranford's head, killing him instantly. While Sam was being returned to Coweta County by a train, a mob kidnapped him at gunpoint and took him to the jail, where a dispute arose between them and the sheriff. The mob agreed to surrender Sam, but only if they were paid their reward money. For some reason, the mob became furious and decided to kidnap Sam once again, this time taking him to a forest so that the authorities won't be able to find him. It is believed that by the time Sam was taken to the forest, the mob had grown to anywhere between 500 to 2,000 individuals. Sam's genitals, ears, and fingers were severed using a knife. He was then repeatedly stabbed by multiple members of the mob. The skin from his face was removed, and his body was doused with kerosene. The mob then chained him to a tree and burned him alive. As the flames consumed Hose's body, he screamed out in agony, "Oh my God! Oh Jesus!" Multiple witnesses recount that the fire was so intense that Hose's veins ruptured, and his eyes nearly burst from their sockets. One witness reported that the crowd watched with unfeigned satisfaction as Hose's body was contorting. It is believed that Sam Hose suffered for an entire 30 minutes on the hands of the mob. Following Hose's death, members of the mob took pieces from his dead body as souvenirs and decorations. Other pieces like the heart and liver were also taken and sold in town. Detective Louis Leven was sent to investigate the lynching of Sam Hose. It was later concluded that Hose acted in self-defense when he killed Alfred Cranford, and that the rape allegation was fabricated to incite a lynching. The Nanking Massacre was a horrific atrocity that was committed by the Imperial Japanese Army against Chinese citizens and surrendering soldiers during the Second World War. The death toll is estimated to be anywhere between 100,000 to 300,000. And tens of thousands of women and young girls were sexually assaulted. On November 11, 1937, after the Japanese troops secured control of Shanghai, they began to march towards the city of Nanjing. By December, the troops have already reached the borders of Nanjing. The Chinese troops were overwhelmed by the invading force and they weren't able to defend the city, so most of them decided to retreat to the other side of the Yangtze River. On the 13th of December, the Japanese troops entered the city and began annihilating its citizens. Hundreds of thousands of civilians and injured soldiers filled the two major streets of Nanjing in a state of panic, and the Japanese troops relentlessly fired at them with tanks and artilleries. Dead bodies of men, women, children, elders covered the two major streets. And the streets were later called the Streets of Blood as a result of the two-day annihilation. A large number of Chinese soldiers had already been captured on the borders of Nanjing before the Japanese troops raided the city. The soldiers that were trapped inside the city removed their military uniforms and disguised themselves as civilians. On the 17th of December, the Japanese troops arrested anybody who was suspected to be a Chinese soldier. A huge number of young men were arrested, and they were then sent to the suburbs to be massacred in an excavation known as the 10,000 Corpse Ditch. Some captives were lucky enough to receive a quick death by machine gun execution, while others were unfortunate enough to be burned alive or gassed. The cruelty of the Japanese troops doesn't end there. They committed numerous heinous atrocities against the innocent citizens of Nanjing. They invented and exercised the most inhumane and barbaric methods of killing imaginable. The war crimes committed against the people of Nanjing would include bayoneting infants in front of their mothers, decapitations, cutting open the abdomen of children, excavating the hearts out of the victims' bodies and eating them, drowning elderly women, burning civilians alive, stabbing the bodies and the eyes of victims with an awl, and even mutilations of female vaginas using bayonets. There are also many accounts of Japanese soldiers forcing families to commit incestuous acts under gunpoint. Sons were forced to engage in sexual activities with their mothers and sisters, and the fathers were forced to engage in sexual activities with their children. According to two U.S. news correspondents, Frank Tillman and Archibald Steele, who were present in Nanjing when the Great Massacre took place, corpses of massacred Chinese soldiers formed mountains that were 6 feet high at the Nanjing-Yijiang Gate in the north. After the Japanese troops were done massacring the citizens of Nanjing, they began looting numerous stores, houses, and hotels, and they burned down houses and newly built government buildings. American historian and writer Jonathan Spence wrote, "There is no obvious explanation for this grim event, nor can one be found. The Japanese soldiers, who had expected easy victory, instead had been fighting hard for months and had taken infinitely higher casualties than anticipated. They were bored, angry, frustrated, tired. The Chinese women were undefended, their menfolk powerless or absent. The war, still undeclared, had no clear-cut goal or purpose. Perhaps all Chinese, regardless of sex or age, seemed marked out as victims." Anthropodermic bibliopegy was a practice in the 18th and 19th century that involved binding books in human skin. Yes, you heard that right, human skin. What you are looking at right now is a book with a cover made from actual human skin. One anthropodermic book was bound in the skin of an unclaimed female mental patient who died of natural causes. Some anthropodermic books were bound in the skin of criminals. And some were even bound in the skin of people who wanted to be memorialized in the form of a book. Only 18 books of this kind still exist, or at least, these are the only ones that have been discovered so far. They can be found in museums and libraries like the Wellcome Library and the Surgeons Hall Museum. Who knows how many anthropodermic books out there that we still haven't discovered yet. So these were 4 truly horrifying things and events from history. If you enjoyed this episode, maybe you should consider subscribing, because I upload episodes like this on a regular basis. Also be sure to hit the like button, because that'll immensely help the video get seen by more people who are interested in this type of content. Thank you for watching.